Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back for another episode of Writeous Incarnation. Not gonna lie, it took me almost a minute to remember what the name of the series is because it has been so long. According to the last YouTube posting, it's been almost a month, I guess. I should just be honest about it. It's been a month. And while my baseline was supposed to be write 1 hour a day, at least one day a week with one video a week, obviously I have fallen short of that. It is still my goal to write. I need to be able to write an hour a day. I don't know why it has proven to be so darn difficult, why my self-control, my discipline is so haywire that I can't pull it off. But that is in the past. I am moving forward, 1 hour a day of the writing and hopefully 1 to 2 videos a week as an update. And as I have something to say, if nothing really occurs to me, there's nothing for me to say other than, hey, I did some writing, then I won't do it. But in theory, there's going to be stuff to talk about with every writing experience. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, setbacks of the past are not going to define the future. We're going to move on from that now. Just basic, starting off very basic, I did try my sitting cross-legged on the floor and doing this actually in the evening. It's like 6 o'clock now, I think, or so. Whereas before I said, I'm a morning person, so I tried to do it in the morning. I sat at my little area desk thing there, but I had mentioned that I've always naturally just sat on the floor, kind of propped up. Like I will sit next to my bed instead of sitting on my bed. It's a weird thing, but that's just kind of how I've always been. And so I thought maybe that would make things easier. So far, the results are not definitive. It was neither easier nor harder. I think the way that I was sitting, I actually ended up like making my back a little sore. It wasn't a good, I wasn't like leaned up against the wall. It's kind of leaned up against this like little beanbag type thing. And I don't think that was good for my back. So my back started to hurt kind of 30 minutes in. And so it made everything a little more uncomfortable. So I don't know yet. I don't know if that is a good solution or not. And I am also rather tired, but I also did some physical exertion today, which I don't normally do. I need to get my body back in shape as well, but that's another story. And so I think I'm more tired now than I would normally be. So this was just kind of a weird day, but I did try it. It wasn't hard. It didn't make it harder. I don't know that it made it as easy as I was hoping it would. And I don't feel that I had the mental acuity, but you know what? It just could be having to push through, like I said very early on, writing is like anything else. It's like, anything that we do, we can get back into the groove, but if we haven't done it for a while, it does stagnate. It does get rusty, and trying to shake it off, especially if you're only doing an hour here and there like I have, it's going to take a while to get back on track and really feel like you can just slide back into it. So I got to expect that. But that's just an update there. I will, the next time tomorrow that I do the writing, it will be also trying the on the floor, hopefully in a better position or a better place. And probably still I can't do it in the afternoon. I will have to do it in the morning, actually, tomorrow morning. So we'll see how that goes. But that's the update on that. I will keep you posted. I know you've been waiting with bated breath, but no definitive results just yet. One thing that did help, my procrastination did help, and it helped in a broad sense, but not in a narrow sense. In a narrow sense, it was about a particular character and how I was going to write a certain character. That character is probably 2 or 3 chapters away from being introduced. So I can't say, well, it's a good thing that I procrastinated because it allowed me to figure out this character so I didn't write him wrong to begin with and then have to go back and correct it. But at the same time, it was a very sobering and very good reminder for me not to do this thing. And I don't know what to call it. It's not a self-insert. I knew not to do that. There's a tendency to want to put ourselves in the story. Obviously, if it's about you, if it's about me, it's autobiography, then you do that. But if it's a fictional story, if you have a male character who is going to be roughly, or for me, it's a male character roughly about the same age and everything, then the tendency is to want to or have pieces of ourselves wanting to be inserted into that character so that we're kind of living vicariously through them. I knew to watch out for that. That's a huge red flag. It really, I don't know, I can't say I always can detect that in work, but sometimes when you're reading a book, you can kind of tell this is the character the author really likes or really resonates with or whatever. And sometimes it makes for a little bit, an awkward situation or a little cheesy or a little like, really? That just seems like, oh, I'd always wanted to do this and it never happened. So I'm going to have my character do this. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not projecting, of course, or maybe I am. I don't know. Anyway, but I knew not to do that, to watch out for that. But I didn't, how do I put this? There's a way that I would normally behave in a situation, and I would model my behavior off of or a character's behavior off of my reactions, off of what I would do, because it's what I know. It's the closest thing to me. So while I'm not inserting myself into that in terms of mechanics or having a certain thing happen or getting the certain reaction or, hey, I asked a girl out in the way that I always wanted it to happen. But I found myself, as I was thinking about this character, that I had already in my mind kind of modeled him after me. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with me, I am not this character. This character in this time, in this place, does not behave the way that I do. He is going to be able to do and say things that I cannot say or do because that's not who I am. If I were to try to be that character, it would come off as forced. In fact, I remember back in grade school, I tried to be one of the cool kids for a day. It was a new school year, and I just happened to have a lot of classes with new students, and nobody that really I grew up with was in any of these classes. So I was like, I can make a fresh start. I can be the cool kid. So I tried to do the slouch, I kicked my legs out, and I had it was like the first year that I had a quasi-cool, outfit kind of thing. Like, my parents always made sure that that they bought me new clothes for the new school year, but a lot of times, even the new shoes, they weren't the cool new shoes. They were new, but they weren't cool shoes, and the clothes weren't the cool shoes or the clothes weren't the cool clothes because we had to get them at a place that doesn't sell the cool clothes. They sell the stuff that was in style years ago. So anyway, I was always taken care of. Love my folks for that. But this was the first year that, just by a convergence of different factors, I actually kind of had a cool look. And so I thought I got the cool look, at least in my head. I don't know what I actually looked like to people, but I thought I was cool. And so I tried to do the thing, kick the legs out, and was like, kind of sitting back in the chair, doing what I thought, cool kids do. I was reserved. I was going to be that, not wearing my heart. I'm not going to be the chitter box. I'm not going to wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm going to keep it in. I'm going to be the cool, this whatever. I'm going to be the mystery guy in the classroom. I gave myself a migraine by fourth period, I think it was, just trying so hard to be somebody that I wasn't. And I just had to give up. I just couldn't sustain it anymore. Now, that doesn't mean I just started talking all over the place, but I just stopped trying to make sure that I was coming across a certain way and just did my thing. And I don't remember what happened the rest of that school year. Obviously, I wasn't nominated class president or anything, but who cares? Bottom line is, I know who I am, and it's very important that I make sure that this character, this particular one that I'm thinking of anyway, is not at all like me, because he needs to be able to do things, like I said, that either would not be able to do, or I am not currently capable of processing as I am now. If certain events transpire and I were to be put in that situation, in theory, I would be able to do something like that. But this is somebody who just operates with a different level. It's interesting when you think about it, confidence, just the general concept of confidence, what confidence looks like to me and how that manifests to me, and when I'm feeling confident, what that looks like to other people and how that comes across is different from somebody else looking confident. Not a fake confidence, not a compensation, but an actual confidence. It is going to look different. Some people, it might make them quiet, they might be focused. Somebody else may just be talking and having a good time because they're just feeling, they're feeling bold, they're feeling ready. So it's going to manifest in a different way. And I think this character, as he is in my mind, needed to be taken away from my version of confidence, my version of security, my version, like what I would do in this particular situation. Again, not as an insert, like I want to put myself in that situation, but informing me, this is how this interaction should go, and go, no, that's how it would go if I was there, but that's not me. This guy has to be somebody very different. Not somebody who I necessarily want to be, but somebody who is, that's who this character is. And so, it was good I dodged a bullet there very slowly, because like I said, it's probably going to be a few chapters before I get to him. So it's not like, that I was under any pressure to figure that out. But it was a good flag moment, and that I need to do that for every character. Every character cannot be a clone of me, a female version of me, a older, younger version of me. It's got to be their own character. And I think that takes a little bit of mental discipline, mental training to keep enough familiar so that these characters are not foreign, they don't seem alien, they don't seem weird, but keep enough of keep enough of the humanity, but get rid of me from each of them, so they're not just mouthpieces for me. I'm not talking through them, that they themselves have their own character, personality. And it's a discipline on how to do that, because You can list out all the characters if you want, all the characteristics if you want. It's not going to help you. You're not going to reference it and be like, oh, she's this and this and this and this. Well, right now she's not any of those things. She's only this. Well, then how does that get communicated? And it can't be the way that I would do it. And also kind of dovetailing with that is that fallacy of writing characters' dialogue, writing how they talk in the same way that I write. I do typically use a few words when I'm speaking that that aren't common, but I don't write the way I talk is what I'm trying to say, and I don't talk the way I write. But the tendency is when I'm writing to write dialogue the way that I would write it, and it makes it very stiff. I mean, I don't know. These thoughts they're congealing, and I'm trying to push them together, and I'm demonstrating to you how good I am not at actually talking. In theory, the writing's better. It can't be any worse, right? But do you understand what I'm saying? It's that you want to write the story as a writer. You want to be able to use a nice plethora of words, a deep wellspring of words. You want to be able to describe things in a certain way. You want to be able to make things flow together. You want to make the words come alive. But when you're writing dialogue or internal monologue, you don't want to write it the way you would write something. It shouldn't be fancy. It shouldn't have a lot of words that other people wouldn't use. Unless you're happening to write like an egghead character who's very, very smart, then you would certainly have them do that. But every character can't be like that. And I've had that feedback come back to me that this sounds like Gilmore Girls, which I've never seen Gilmore Girls, but just think of any of the TV shows with a very stylized dialogue. You can certainly do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's not my goal, if my goal is to create grounded, realistic characters, and for this kind of story, that's what I want. I want it. Everything that I'm doing, most of what I'm doing is trying to, as best as possible, ground this in reality. This isn't a fantasy. And that's part of the whole point of this. This isn't something like, oh, how cool is this? Now, again, you look at the image and go, okay, well, that looks fantastic. Not like amazing, but fantasy-like. This is somebody with artificial legs she's obviously doing stuff that right now, at least in this particular moment in her history, probably can't be done. We're probably close. We have different elements, but to be able to do, in theory, what she's doing, we're not there yet. But I don't think we're far off. And maybe the prototypes already exist that would allow somebody to do this, but trying to ground it as much because it's supposed to hit you. And I think stylized is entertaining, but grounded is where it's going to have an impact. When you see something and it's not that far away from somebody that you know, or an experience that you've had, or a thought that you've had, and the way that those thoughts are expressed is going to be a very big deal. I don't want that to take people out of the immersion, if you will. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff to factor in. It's a lot of stuff to try to keep in mind. It can feel exhausting, but I think like keeping those at top of mind is going to be a big deal in making sure the characters are not me. They don't just feel like different shades of me. And I'm going to be honest, that's something new. I think I've done a lot of writing, but I haven't done a lot of writing with multiple characters that have to be self-contained. They have to be sustained. It's not, okay, here's a character for one scene and you'll never see them again, or a quick exchange and you never see them again. These are characters that have to carry the weight of an entire story, of an entire narrative. I have never done that before. And I know, if it's like, well, what kind of pompous twit are you sitting there talking about writing when you haven't even done it? Well, it's part of it is me formulating the thoughts and learning as I go and just kind of sharing that and not saying, oh, hey, here's the brilliance I have. It's more of, hey, this is what occurred to me. This is what I've heard from other people actually, and this is what I've gone through, and this is how I process this. And hopefully it resonates on some level with you and in your journey as well. And if you're not a writer, you go, okay, well, you know what? This could be why not everybody writes, why it can take so long, and why what is it? There's so many writers that just say, just write something. And I think I mentioned that in the very first episode or the first two episodes, but it's like, just get something down on paper. The hardest thing to face is a blank page. Just get something down, get the momentum going. that's the best thing you can do, which is why I'm trying to, force myself, just sit down and write for an hour. I don't have to write 10 pages. I don't have to even write a page. It can be one paragraph, but it's, oh my gosh, it's just, even just having the discipline to do that, because it really is, for the reasons that I've listed already, and I haven't even got to that yet. I'm still setting up a very basic, like the first scene. I'm just finishing now the first chapter, which would have been the first scene of the story, and it's going to move on to another. The initial day essentially is going to be rapid chapters. It's going back and forth between characters to set up that all of this happens in a 12-hour period, and bringing it all together there, and then broadening the story, letting it air out after that. So I haven't even really got to the hard stuff, but it's just the grind of just going, oh my gosh, how do I phrase this the right way? Oh, okay, I didn't write that the right way. Let me go back. And it's really hard not to be the editor when you're doing your own writing. It's very hard to just leave it and move on to the next sentence, knowing that sentence was probably not going to be the way you want it to be at the end. Like, for some reason I have in my head, like if I wanted to, have somebody read this now, I would be so embarrassed because it's so discombobulated, or it's so, it's so rough in certain places. And it's like, it's okay. It's probably better for me to get some days of separation between, like, let it cool down before I go back and try to edit it, versus while it's still hot, while it's still going, because I'm just going to keep changing it again, come at it with a fresh brain. So that's something else that I'm trying to do. So it's a discipline of just learning the process. I don't know if they teach that in any practical, like, I don't know if there's there's screenwriting classes, like here are the principles of how to write a script, or, the basic story arcs, but the actual nuts and bolts of it, and when to, psyching yourself out and all that kind of stuff, getting out of your head. But yeah, and I will say every day that went by, there was at least a time a day, even though I didn't spend an hour a day writing, I spent at least 5 minutes regretting the fact that I hadn't written. And if there was enough time left in the day, regretting the fact that I was not planning to write anything that day. And then of course, I mentioned in the other episode, there have been songs that I've attached to it, songs that have kind of inspired it or were part of the creative process in terms of the imagery and everything. And one of them, I'm playing just a random selection, and one of them happens to come on, and it just kind of pushes me right here, because I know, there is a story that needs to come out, and that there is a finite amount of time. Not necessarily thinking about that I would die, but there's a time when the fruit is ripe. When the time is right, when everything is right for this story to get legs, to be put out there. There's a place where society will be. There's a place where I'm going to be. There's a place where world events will be. That if they converge at the right place and the right time, this will, and I'm not saying this is just my project, but any project will either get legs or get wings and fly off and take off, I should say, or it'll just kind of get lost in the shuffle and maybe be considered ahead of its time, and 20 years down the road, it'll resurface again or come back. It's a very interesting thing, and I have no control over that, but I do have control over how aggressively I go after it. And if I say, you know what, I wrote as much as I could, as long as I could, and I got it done in 3 years. Well, that was the best I could do. I already know I'm not there. I already know that however long it is, it's probably going to be 2 months longer than it should have been. There is something else that I'm grappling with, and that is whether or not to introduce another, I don't know if you want to call it a theme, but another dynamic, I guess is a better word for it, where it's a dynamic that's near and dear to my heart, something that I like to see in movies and media, but I haven't decided. I'm trying to figure out if it actually has a place in this story. And if I were to put it in there, would I be shoehorning it, or would I be just naturally expanding the story or certain relational parameters in order to allow that dynamic to be there? Because you want to write what you're passionate about, what you're excited about, but at the same time, I think I've seen enough projects and I've done it enough times where when you try to force something in there, and it's like that, really, it doesn't really belong, or it's competing with center stage for what I'm trying to do, what the vision is for this. So I am trying to work through that as well. That's a recent development, and I have not quite sorted it out yet. I'm going to try to, hopefully, if I do a good enough job with what I mentioned with the characters, letting them be their own thing and letting them tell the story. Like, I really want to be able to be able to think, what would he say right now? And I'm almost asking him, or just put the characters out. And I don't usually visualize things. I hear things, and not voices or anything. But like if I'm going to have a scene, I'll see general shapes in a general setting, but I'll hear the words. In fact, got very excited. I got the dialogue towards the very end. Of course, I'm getting all this on the back end, like all the cool stuff on the back end, but just in a way that these characters are going to express certain ideas. It's on the back end, and I'm like, it's perfect. It's exactly how these characters would express themselves. But then the good news is that it's kind of retroactively coloring how they're going to interact with each other before that. To know that even at the very end of this story, of this narrative, in this particular moment, that this is how they relate to each other, that tells me that I can't go beyond that at any point in the story. That it must be kind of reined in and restrained. And that is kind of exciting for me as well, just because it's counter to who I am. I'm a get it all out there, which, I mean, you don't know how hard it is for me to talk about the story, but that it really isn't, that's not what this is about, at least in this particular moment. And I don't know if I introduce, like, I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you this a little bit here, a little bit there, without the context, it's gonna mean very little, and it's probably gonna be more confusing than anything. So I'm trying not to go into those details, but I do think that is a good, kind of a good thing, even though you're getting the tail end. If you get an idea or inspiration for something at the end, it can seem very frustrating because you're so far away from there. And it's like, well, I could write that, but it feels like I'm kind of cheating, like I haven't. But no, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Denise, I believe when you talked that, you go ahead or it was you or somebody else that said, well, have you thought about, no, Jaden, I believe it was you, sir, that said, why don't you go ahead and write what you have in your brain for the end, and maybe that'll help inspire you to go from the beginning. And I know from an video editing standpoint, I do that a lot, especially like with music. If there's something that is I'm having a hard time, I'm kind of grinding through it, I'll lay down some music, try to put some edits on the beats, and you get a little section, a little 10-second section that looks really good and has a lot of energy, and you're like, oh, this is so good. And then you're like, okay, and then you kind of ripple out from there, and you kind of bring the pieces together. I'm not sure if that would work or not. I have considered doing that, but I think for the reason that I mentioned before, where, okay, I do have certain elements of the end, but I feel like there is some growth. There are going to be some things that happen that are going to recontextualize or reshape a little bit of what's going to happen in the end, or how I write it at the end. My voice hopefully is going to mature and get better. So I'd rather not write, like it's cemented in my head. I'm not going to forget it. But that the journey I'm going to go on is going to mean that end is going to be, I don't know if it'll be better, but it's going to be different. It's going to have more to it. It's going to have, my voice will be more mature. Have more whatever to it. And so I'm going to have to rewrite it anyway. But I have thought about doing that. But that's really what the picture was for. That was me skipping to the end and going, this is all the emotion, the ball of emotion that I have right now that I want to express. And I'll put it in the most awkward medium that I can work with, because it's not my milieu, if you will. And I think that's actually going to do it for right now. I really haven't covered a lot of ground, so there's not as much for me to talk about right now. I lost a lot of momentum in this past month. I've kind of got to restart, get the engine going again, and get moving. But I'm very thankful that in that interim, even though it was, for all intents and purposes, wasted time as it pertains to this project, that there were some things that I came to mind that I can keep with me moving into it. And I just got to remind myself, it's got to be grace for it. I haven't even been at it 10 hours. Do I expect to be operating at maximum efficiency in anything else? Like, there's nothing else that I do that I would expect to be awesome at within 10 hours. I mean, maybe some video games, very basic video games, sure. But anything really worthwhile, anything really worth pursuing and developing, it's going to take more than 10 hours. And I'm not even halfway to that yet. So thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Thank you for tuning in. As I said, I'm not going to do a video every single time I write, and I want to be at the point where I'm writing an hour a day, but I'm hoping at least one video every week, every 2 weeks. So I do apologize for the long lapse. Not doing myself any favors, but it's a growing process, and thank goodness tomorrow's another day. So anyway, until then, take care.